Every now and then there's a show that garners a lot of attention, that has interesting characters and unique dynamics, and a unique world to boot. A show that starts off extremely good, extremely promising, and then it flops. It reaches a point and just falls off, just plummets and just fails. That's what we're going to be talking about today. A show that had the world in its hand, who managed to die by its own as well. There are many factors that can lead to decline in a show's quality. We'll be breaking those down today as we take a look at the fall of Star vs. Force of Evil. Let's talk about it. If you don't know, Star vs. Force of Evil is a Disney XD original series that follows the story of Star, a princess/magical girl from another dimension named Muni, who ends up being sent to Earth where she meets our main character, Marco. The two instantly become great friends and go on many different adventures on Earth, Muni, and many other dimensions. The series aired from 2015 to 2018, ranging over 4 different seasons, spanning a total of 77 episodes, with 140 total segments. For a show with true canon but still having a large comedic aspect to it, it's extremely respectable. Its story reminds me a bit of Adventure Time in the way how it decides to go about its story. The show garnered great reviews at the start, having the highest viewership for its pilot at 1.2 million viewers. And its first season sits at a 100% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with an 88% audience rating. Which honestly doesn't really mean shit, but it's still an interesting metric that I decided to note because I want to set a base for how the show was originally great. The early episodes and seasons were some of the best things on TV to watch, and in my opinion, the first season could be one of the best cartoon starts, well, ever. And to give you a brief idea on why, let's dive into Exhibit 1, a shooting star. Star vs. Force of Evil Season 1 starts off fairly simple. The first episode introduces Star as a reckless and wild princess of a kingdom named Muni. Her parents are worried about her potentially destroying the kingdom and the threat of evil capturing the wand. So with this, she's sent off to Earth and enrolled in Echo Creek High School. They then decide to appoint the safe kid, Marco, to show her around. Being startled by her powers at first, he heads home after the tour only to surprise that Star will be staying with him and his family while she's on Earth. During all of this, Marco's beginning to start feeling frustrated by Star's antics and decide to walk out of the house in anger. Star goes to apologize, but the two end up getting ambushed by our first minor villain, Ludo. The two team up and take down the forces of evil as Ludo vows revenge. Marco then is impressed by the two's ability to work together, and Star admitting that he's right. Star begins to pack like she was going to leave, but Marco says he wants her to stay with his family. The two head home, beginning the story and setting the tone in the initial build-up for the series. The beginning of the first season does what any first season should do. The first 15 episodes serve the purpose of introducing the main recurring characters and creating the bonds and friendship that we'll see throughout the rest of the show. The main ones obviously being developing the main characters, Star and Marco. Marco throughout the show is showcased being more safe and responsible of the pair, often being the one to attempt to bail Star some insane problem, or having Star put him in some ridiculous trouble and trying to free himself from that. In the first season, Marco is extremely likable and protective of Star, trying to make sure she's able to safely adjust to Earth and doesn't get into too much trouble. On the other hand, we have Star, the wild and energetic type character. To give you guys a comparison, Star is like Mabel on steroids.
What the fuck?
She's hyper, colorful, and full of explosive energy. Literally. And that being partnered with her magic makes her kind of a wild card. Star developed is mostly her being naive in many ways and showcasing her learning to better utilize her magic and adapt to the customs of planet Earth. Two balance each other out extremely well, creating a fun, if not unique, dynamic. Aside from this, we have characters like Ponyhead, a saucy, party-hungry unicorn, as well as Star's best friend. Then we have Ferguson, Alfonso, Marco's nerdy best Earth friends. Tom, Star's ex-boyfriend slash miniature villain that has quite a bit of anger issues, and of course, like I mentioned before, Ludo, the first minor villain. Ludo's a bit more important to the plot more than the others. Throughout Ludo's antics, he always falls short and his plans to steal the wand. Ludo himself is not the wisest and falls into the category of the comedy villain that we normally see in cartoons, in the likes of Dr. Doofenshmirtz, where you know they're not going to really win in the end, but it's still fun to see him try. And of course, for the first 15 episodes, we see these failures in plenty. The status quo is changed, however, in episode 16. Episode 16 features the first introduction to our main villain, Toffee. Toffee is the complete opposite of Ludo. He's serious, intelligent, and sneaky. After returning from another failure, Ludo puts out a wanted for new recruits to his army, and one of the people ends up showing up is Toffee. Toffee's entire aura he provides is different from anything we've seen in the entire show. Most things we've seen have been grounded in comedy and silliness, but for him, he has a complete opposite vibe. He suggests a plan involving fortune cookies to trick Star into nearly losing her wand. The plan almost goes through until one of the monsters ends up messing it up. Even so, the plan is the closest Ludo's ever gotten to getting the wand, and the group end up retreating and going back to the castle. Ludo fantasizing about the wand, but Toffee ominously gazing in the distance of the castle. While staring, he states Ludo's not the first monster to fall into victim of their magic, planting this season foreshadowing about the future to come and that Toffee has a history with the butterfly family. Flying ahead, the next couple episodes feature more characters developing, showcasing characters like Marco's crush Jackie, as well as the strange character Jana, who both of which we get into later. But most importantly, the big moment is the ending of episode 23, where Toffee takes control of Ludo's army and kicks Ludo out of the castle. This ends up setting up for the season 1 finale, Storm the Castle. This episode starts off with an adventure of Star and Marco going kinda rough, leading into an argument between the two, ending with Star telling Marco that sometimes she wonders why the two of them are even friends. The two end up both going back to their own rooms, and when Star wakes up, she heads to Marco's room and notices he's missing. Calling his phone and hearing it from upstairs, she heads up there and sees a fly wearing his hoodie that leaves a message telling her to bring the wand to Ludo's castle. After this, Star decides it's her fault that he was kidnapped and she heads to go save him, recruiting Buff, Frog, and Ludo along the way. They make it to the castle and beat up Toffee's minions. Marco, however, is trapped in a magic box that's impenetrable and regenerates if it's ever destroyed. However, Star is still defiant handing over the wand, but then the box begins to slowly shrink to crush Marco. Star then, reluctantly, has her surrender the wand and is told by Toffee to destroy her wand using the first spell her mother ever taught her. Despite Marco asking her not to do it, she uses the spell. The wand deactivates and Toffee frees Marco from the box, but knowing the actual effects of the spell, she runs inside the box with Marco as the wand explodes, seemingly killing Toffee as nothing is left out of the explosion except for his coat. But, luckily, as the two sit there, a new unicorn comes and enters the wand that was destroyed. This ends up reviving the wand but having only half the crystal intact. Then, the army of Muni shows up and Star and Marco ends up explaining what happened. Just happy that Star is safe, Queen Moon allows her to head back to Earth with the Diez's. We then see Queen Moon calling Glossaric, and he comments that the wand should be fine as long as no pieces were left behind, with the two butterflies looking nervous as the other half of the wand was still missing. This season finale was amazing. It set up stakes and set forth foreshadowing on what may come next. They set up a potential return of Toffee, the current state of the wand, and whatever may come of Ludo. On top of that, the season itself has a great foundation for the series to come. It featured interesting characters, world, and ideas that kept the viewers interested in every single episode. The comedy was fun, and as a whole, the first season showcasing what made Star vs. Force Evil great. As a fan at the time, I was extremely excited for the future potential of the show, and what would be next. But, as the title of the video states, this couldn't last forever, as we enter the second season of Star vs. Force of Evil, Exhibit B, A Lost Purpose. I named Exhibit B A Lost Purpose due to the feeling of the show feeling as if it's lost its direction. Unlike the Gravity Fall video where I broke down each season completely down, there's a total of 4, so I'm just going to do a quick rundown of major events in this season as well as a quick summary and my thoughts. This season is a bit different. Most of the episodes are again character centric, but with a higher focus on Star getting better with her magic and Marco more off doing his own thing. Alongside this, we get episodes featuring Ludo, who has found the other side of the wand and his journey on learning how to use his power himself. As a whole, this season feels quite jumbled. There's a lot going on in this season, and the pacing just feels a bit strange. There's a bunch of moments and realizations that stand out in this season, mostly Ludo's wand having a weird voice inside of it, Star ends up entering her wand and she finds Toffee's missing finger, and eventually Glossaric in the book ended up being stolen by Ludo. All of this is happening between many different character-centric episodes. It feels really odd. We can go from a serious statement to a bunch of comedy episodes that feature stuff that don't really matter or add anything to the story. The season eventually ends with the return of Toffee, now with control of Ludo's body, defeating the Magical High Commission, and with Star having to leave and return back to Muni. As a whole, the season wasn't bad. It wasn't painful to watch, it wasn't disgusting, it didn't make me feel bad. It had some good comedy, some good development as a whole, but the season just felt empty. It was as if something was missing from the first season. It was like the charm was fading. The plots through episodes were more or less just short bits or the side stories of other episodes, which left the entire season feeling like filler. I know it's a cartoon more focused on episodic comedy rather than a hardcore storytelling, but with the tone shift that was provided from the finale of season 1, it seemed as if they would give that side of the show more of a focus and a spotlight, but in my opinion it felt more as an afterthought. On a positive note though, I feel like in a vacuum, the plot elements that they did introduce left a curiosity and interest that would happen once these things get brought up more. these mainly being Toffee's finger while it was there, Eclipsa as a whole because she was mentioned and she has this whole mystique behind her, and wants to come in the Magical Commission and Glossary. The show still had so much left to answer and still had this aura around it, that there was more that we didn't learn yet that we were going to figure out. So I can't claim this season is where it began to fall off completely, but I can say that it was a sign to what was coming later. One of the things the season did was start to plant the seed for some of the biggest issues I feel that the show had from the start. And that's going to be simplified a lot more in the next 2 seasons, as I combine those two for Exhibit 3. Starstruck. This is going to be a while. Season 3 and Season 4 of Star Versus are some of the hardest to watch in my opinion, and at first glance you wouldn't expect it. Season 3 begins with Star heading back to Muni with her mother, and things in that dimension are going extremely bad. We begin to hear the backstory of Toffee and learn that he is the one that killed Moon's mother. We also get introduced to a little bit of lore about my personal favorite character in the entire show, Eclipsa. Eclipsa is seen as the evil queen, due to her connection to monsters. We'll get into that later, but after hearing this backstory, we see that Ludo has taken over the kingdom and that Marco has made his way to Muni, but ended up getting kidnapped by Ludo. The first 6 episodes have so much lore and action going on, and as a whole, it was what I was waiting for with this show. It was serious and had a clear focus on stopping Toffee. At first glance, I thought the season was going to be pretty much drawn out. We'll have Star and the others trying to overcome Ludo and Toffee, and as a whole, a more streamlined story. But episode 7 happened. This episode teaches you how not to write a villain, how not to kill off your villain. In this episode, Toffee finally reveals himself to the others after he gets his finger back and becomes whole, as well as revealing that he's finally completed his goal to destroy all the magic. All hope seems lost, and as a whole it had me excited for how they'll get out of this. Maybe they'll band together and over a course of many episodes they'll build up an army and be able to fight through Toffee, but no. Not at all. Star, after being trapped in the wand, managed to find a little bit of magic left after Toffee destroyed it, and she busts out the wand and she one-shots Toffee.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
After getting one shot, he gets promptly pushed and crushed by a boulder by Ludo.
Gotcha, nigga! New op pack in the air, this gas or what? He'll still be alive right now if you niggas ain't gas him up. Give my shit.
And that's it. Toffee's gone. He's never brought up ever again, and the best villain in the series is dead in episode 7 of, let's see, a 31 episode season. Fuck. Well, maybe we'll get introduced to the next villain. Maybe they would do something more dangerous and interesting. Maybe Eclipsa. You know, we've been getting a lot of build up on how she's done terrible things, she's done evil things, and now that Toffee's dead, the promise is done, she'll be freed. Maybe she's gonna be the best no. She turns out to be a good character. She's a good guy. She's on the side of good and positivity. She is a great character, extremely well written. Well, maybe we'll get, I don't know, screw it, we'll figure that out later. But like I said, Eclipsa was now freed. Eclipsa is such a great character, and like I said, my personal favorite. In a show full of unbearable characters at this point, Eclipsa was a breath of fresh air and added an interesting aura to the show that we hadn't really had since Toffee was a main character. It was very interesting to try to guess and figure out her true motives, but we then learned that her imprisoning was merely for marrying a monster. Tough. After this is when I would say this drop starts to heavily happen. We get into this really weird racism thing. I don't mind shows covering these types of messages. It's always healthy, and I think a fair amount of shows can cover something like this and decide to do it in a very interesting and unique way. But it's the way that they decided to go about it that just irks me. It felt superficial and extremely badly portrayed. The season plans to suit with Star wanting to give the monsters equal rights and assisting with trying to push this throughout the kingdoms. Along with this, the season also has a heavy focus on the fact that after Eclipsa, that the butterflies were not in fact true royalty, and that through lies they had hid the truth from even Queen Moon herself. This was a major turning point of the season, but as a whole it felt kind of random and out of nowhere. There was a slight build up, but as a whole the plot points seemed pretty strange. After this reveal, however, nothing much really comes out of it, except for that the mystery of who and where Eclipsa's daughter was. And that brings us to our next main antagonist, the ex-headmasters of the school for misguided princesses, St. Olga's, Miss Heinous, now going by her real name Meteora. Meteora is a weird villain. Instead of going with the toffee strategy of a wise and calculated foe that gave off dread and the vibe that he gave off throughout the entire existence, we had more of a wild and dangerous villain, physically. Throughout these last episodes, the group and the others are just trying to defeat Meteora and stop her from absorbing people's souls. I don't know why, but this entire setup with Meteora felt extremely weak, as well as I said, all over the place. It felt so sudden and out of nowhere in regards to the rest of the story, and the payoff in the end wasn't really as climactic as you would hope. In the end, they managed to defeat Meteora with Eclipsa just turning into a baby again. Okay. And then at the end, Star ends up letting Eclipsa keep the wand and assuming control of Muni. This is because as Star, now assuming the role as queen, now knows her family isn't true royalty, I guess.
Who the fuck wrote this?
This whole season just left me with a bunch of questions like, why was it bad that Eclipsa was a monster? Why does it matter if the family wasn't royalty or not? Does Meteora keep her memories? What happens if she does keep the memories and she returns to her evil ways? Why is there a spell to turn people to a baby in the first place? Why does Swirl of Magic make people stupid? Why did Glossary pretend to have amnesia? Why does Meteora even eat souls? And why are we here just to suffer? Commercial break! Hey you, yes you wonderful creature. You wanna know what's not a disappointment? This channel. Make sure while you're here, you know, looking all cute and stuff, to click that like button. Ooh, you like pressing that, huh? I know you like pressing that. How about you press that subscribe button? Ooh, daring, I know. You know you want to. Yeah, good job, good job. I gotta stop letting this idiot into the booth. Well, okay, well, that was season 3. Season 4 is probably the worst season of a show I've ever seen in my entire life. And considering the amount of shows I've seen in my lifetime, that's a hard thing to pull off. Honestly, I'm kind of proud. But this season's where the real racism arc comes in. The entire season is centered around Eclipsa becoming the new Queen of Muni and the humans reluctantly to accept her. The season really paints the Mumin and Star's mother as some of the most unlikable and unbearable individuals I've ever had the displeasure to view. Sure, fuck it. You want people to be reluctant to accept Eclipsa. Go for it. They still fear Globgor based on what they've been told, but it's at the point where the people of the kingdom just are so useless and unable to do anything without guidance that bothers me. The characterization for the Mumins, it just feels annoying. It just seems like forced conflict that, in my opinion, didn't really get a payoff or a drastic fix that left the viewer satisfied. Another aspect that I hate in the season is the characterization and the development of Star and Marco. It's really hard to care or root for either or. Marco throughout the season just feels off, as if he's become a lot slower than he used to be. I guess the writers decided to make him more bold and brave to contrast his first season counterpart to create some artificial character development, but as a whole it just makes him come off of kind of full of himself and a little bit stupid. On the other side, Star. Oh Jesus Christ on fucking baboons booty cheeks, help me. God, where do I begin? Star's written in such a way that makes her seem like the antagonist of the entire show. Throughout the season, like I said, the main focus is Eclipsa becoming the new Queen of Muni, but during this, Star decided to help out and get the people to like her, but in the ways she tries to help her don't make any sense. She pretends to have some sort of moral high ground over Eclipsa, saying that Eclipsa is doing everything the wrong way in regards to how she decides to get things done. Which in some cases, sure, swapping bodies with Romulus is not the play, but the way that she tried to hide the spellbook piece from Eclipsa, as well as stating that she broke her trust from finding it and taking it, is ridiculous. But then you realize that she's just being a giant hypocrite, because you yourself, by hiding that piece, showcases that you don't trust Eclipsa. So what's the point of you saying that she broke your trust when you didn't trust her in the first place? And don't even get me started on how she treats Tom. Jesus Christ, but we'll get to that later. After Eclipsa officially is coronated as queen, Star decides to go on a trip, which she doesn't really end up happening, and she goes back to Earth for a vacation with Marco. Anyway, the villain gets introduced. We then learn that Mina, who's living in the old ways, had devised a plan to dethrone Eclipsa and Globgor because she's racist and she hates monsters and etc, whatever. Eventually though, it's revealed that Moon was the one that told Mina to do all this. She also doesn't trust Eclipsa because she doesn't trust Eclipsa. We don't really get a good reason about this, because all I know is that from what we've seen with their bond and their relationship and their talking, was that they kind of had a bond going on and that she was showcased being a good person. There was never a moment where Eclipsa really looked like a villain towards Moon, so I don't understand where Moon's coming from at all, and it just seemed to create forced conflict. But anyway, having her own mention, Mina and the other knights nearly destroy the kingdom and all the monsters, but in the end Star saves the day by erasing all of the magic in the universe, but somehow destroying all the magic in the universe, I don't know why, ends up combining Earth and Muni. You may be wondering why I went through all of that so quickly. Well, it's because the build-up was bad. There was not enough episodes that focused on the main plot, and most of it was just stupid filler to push some romance agenda, but again, we'll get to that later. The only thing we really got were little hits about Mina plotting something, but on its own it doesn't really feel like a final villain. Mina's motivations are so simple and bland that the ending of the series was just a huge waste. Mina just feels like a first season side character that they decided to bring back and drop into the final villain role. Oh wait, that's exactly what they did.
Just don't think. Don't think. Oh, it feels so good. Oh.
But as a whole, with that, the ending of the show was over. Boom, no 5th season, great. They ended the series on a large cliffhanger as well, which I'm guessing showcasing they expected a 5th season, which may or probably not with this show's track record, did not answer any more questions that remained after the finale, but hey, who cares, am I right? Because the ship sailed. Starco are reunited. Woo! Man, fuck it. Negasai, hand me the last piece of evidence. Oh shit. Forgot. Anyway. Exhibit D. A shipwreck. Shipwreck is a silly play on words to describe one of the biggest defining features that people often bring up when it comes to Starverses. The ships. Romance and animation could be its own video topic that I'm totally going to steal and hide for later, so I'll just mainly focus on how it affects the quality of this show, to be precise. The romance in this show isn't really a negative thing per se, but the focus on it while serious matters and major plot points are happening is where the issues arise. And the way that it decides to go about writing it seems like if the studio itself were at odds as what to do with these characters. Like, when I watch these episodes, I picture the studio being at a war fighting for their Tumblr sides. What I mean by this is they would be pushing one relationship in one episode, and then in the next they push a completely different one and write the characters completely inconsistent. I'm not sure if the episodes were written without reviewing the other episodes, or they were changing stuff due to the audience reaction as a whole, but the hyper focus and the character warping they sacrifice, pushing the plot and the writer characters in such an unlikable way. I would say the biggest issues arise with the number one ship, Starco. Star and Marco are shown to have interest to each other throughout various times throughout the show. At the beginning, they start off as friends, because Marco just has a crush on a different girl from his school named Jackie. During this, Star has semi-interest in some weird kid, but ultimately we learn from Star's Princess song that she has a crush on Marco. This creates an awkward aura around Marco, him being conflicted on how to respond to this due to his current relationship with Jackie. This could have been a good idea in regards to teaching younger viewers how to deal with a semi-mature topic, but they decided to do what this show likes to do and say, fuck it, let's not focus on that and let's write it pretty poorly. Jackie eventually breaks up with Marco, for him obviously still having feelings for Star as well. He eventually shows up at Muni and we learn that Star has already gotten together with her ex-boyfriend, Tom. Tom at this time has gone through a lot of character development. At this point, he's had such a drastic change in character that felt like a really good step to showcase how much he's gone through changes. As a whole, this relationship seemed pretty healthy and cool at the start. It blended with the really weird and out of place racist undertone the show was going to, and it showcased a human-monster relationship happening, even if that whole conflict was written like shit. And hey, they even introduced a really nice match for Marco and the character of Kelly, with whom Marco had a lot of common with, as well as her being the only one to wish him a happy birthday. But, much like an OnlyFans star, this show has a thing for cucking people. Star and Marco end up kissing, and Tom, being changed, isn't even mad. He just wants to move past it. You precious man, get out of there. And I mean it when I say that, because through all of this, the way Star treats Tom is borderline abusive. She doesn't make time for him, she flakes out on his plans, she kisses Marco, she does all this shit to Tom, but guess what? Who cares as long as Star and Marco are happy? We viewers should be happy too. But don't worry, this whole Star Marco thing was revealed to be a curse. Guess what? I forgot to bring up the Blood Moon Ball. Apparently, the two, all the way back in season 1, have been linked together romantically and destined to be together since due to some sort of curse. This gets brought up all the way into season 4, and apparently this entire time has been the reason they've had feelings for each other. It was long-term storytelling all along, kinda like Marco's monster arm. Yeah, long-term storytelling in Star vs. the Force of Evil. Sure. but after the curse is lifted, it seems that the two can go their separate ways. No, I'm kidding. Nope, instead of traveling abroad with Tom like she promised, she decided to head back to Earth with Marco. And eventually, Tom breaks up with her and yada yada, Star Marco get together, season finale, whatever, who fucking cares? Because normally I wouldn't care, it's a show, female and male protagonists get together, kissy kissy, whatever. But they did this during the worst time possible. Remember the issue I talked about the show with putting stuff, serious matters, and filler? Yeah, it happens during the final episode. There's an entire large portion of the final episode that's dedicated to this. Brilliant. The thing is, my issue isn't, oh, my ship didn't sail. I really couldn't care who ended up with who. My issue is how poorly written this all is, and how painstakingly drawn out everything was, and how god awfully the characters were written throughout all of this. See, sure, whatever, the breakup with Jackie works, whatever, you want to do that, but here's the thing, what was the point of pulling the same shit with Star and Tom? You took the same exact art and did it again, but this time you made it worse. You repeated the same arc you did with Marco with Star. You showcased how disloyal, untrustworthy, and how just awful of a character that Star really was. You took Tom's character and made him look like the ultimate cup. You wasted entire like fucking 70 episodes on this. You wasted an entire potential connection you had to a major plot. And you wasted tens of episodes on this while also trying to talk about racism. Jesus. Like I said, the romance in the show isn't bad in itself, but it's how it's written and how much time they waste on this. It's disheartening. Why would you have all these serious moments happening but try to throw a romance plot into it that wastes more episodes than plot? It just gets annoying and it's just tragic. The show had so much potential and it could have been a classic. Exhibit F. Closing argument. Star Wars Force of Evil was a ride. Despite all of this, despite all of these issues, despite all the inconsistency, the bad pacing, the weird plot points, the awful amount of filler, I wanted to enjoy the show. Being a big fan of American animation in the magical girl genre, this was a breath of fresh air, combining two separate genres and styles and putting them together to one. It had a solid base, an interesting world, and an interesting cast. The first season, like I said, remains one of my favorites of all time. And if they kept that consistency throughout the entire show, this video would have been so much different. Star Wars Force of Evil isn't terrible. It isn't the worst show I've ever seen. It isn't even in the worst 10. But what it was a show that I was hyped for, a show I wake weekly for, a show that I was inspired to do, a show that made me want to do what I want to do in life. But what it became was a hollow shell of its former self. But like I always say, nothing lasts forever. And with that, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and subscribe if you want to see some more. And so, I'll leave you guys with this. Case closed.